Hello, we are Eastern Washington University's CFA research team. My name is Daniel Plega,
Brandon Driscoll,
Luis Gomez.
Anthony Stouter.
Taylor Brown.
and we're here to present our evaluations and analysis of Banner Corporation stock. For our recommendation, we are issuing a buy recommendation for Banner stock based on our price target of 63.22, which is a 15% upside seen from the price on January 20th, 54.87. We also are going to support this with information and the fundamentals of Banner stock that reflect their success following the super community business model.
So Banner Bank is a super community bank with an asset size of $12.5 billion. They're going to be in California, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. They have a diverse lending portfolio that includes commercial loans, real estate loans, agriculture, consumer business. Banner Bank has been kind of pushing with innovative banking capabilities.
Banner's acquisitions include Southwest Oregon branches, Siaslaw Bank, American West Bank, Skagit Bank, and Alta Pacific Bank. They are located in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and California, which account for 16% of the nation's population, but is projected to account for 24% of its growth. At the end of 2018, Banner passed the $10 billion in assets mark. So under the Dodd-Frank Act, they are a regional bank. And basically extra regulations come with this, like increased reserves, increased stress tests, and increased, they have to handle the extra charges that come with the interchange bank cards, interchange fees, and yeah. Banner over the last 5 years has maintained strong capital ratios for the total capital to risk-weighted assets and the tier 1 capital to risk-weighted assets. They stayed above the mandatory 10.5%.
So Banner Bank has been pushing for a stronger portfolio. Since 2008, they've been decreasing their construction loan portfolio while increasing their consumer and real estate, which is going to include multifamily and business. And Banner Bank has had an allowance for loss to non-performing loans of 600%, and it has been below 300% in the past 5 years. They also have allowance for loan loss to total loans at 1.11% in 2018, and hasn't been higher than 2% in the past 5 years.
Right, here we can see recent trends in revenue, assets, and shareholder equity since 2014. The graphs show upward movements in all three categories, and this is due in large part to recent acquisitions as they cross that $10 billion mark. And due to these trends, as well as good business practices, we see improving ROA and ROE. The graphs demonstrate Banner actually surpassing the peer average.
So the high of 74.7% and a low of 62.33%. We found that Banner Bank has a higher efficiency ratio compared to its peers, who peak out at 58.2%, 12% at any time. And this high efficiency ratio is because of the large amount of branches that they have. And these two graphs, one is total expenses, total deposits, and the other one's total expenses to interest-bearing deposits. And both of the graphs, it shows that Banner Bank has low-cost deposits. And they're able to have these low-cost deposits because there's not a lot of competition in the rural areas that they would key at, so they're able to keep that price. And Banner Bank also has a high net interest margin, making it very competitive compared to its peers.
For our evaluation and to set our price target, we decided to use two models. We used the dividend discount model based on their consistent dividend payouts, and we used a P/E ratio analysis in order to determine the fair value among its peers. For the dividend discount model, we used the capital asset pricing model to determine our discount rate for required rate of return, using the 30-year treasury rate of 2.23 and assuming a market return of around 8%. And then we calculated our beta using the adjusted monthly closings from the beginning of 2014 to the end of 2019. And then for our growth rate, we calculated the 5-year average of Banner's sustainable growth rate. And then to determine the price target, we used dividends paid for 2019, and we came up with a price target of $59.37 per share. Leading into our PE ratio analysis, Banner Bank's PE ratio over since 2014, the minimum was 12.37, with a high of 28.85, averaging around 18.17, and currently it is much closer to the minimum than it is the average. And among the peer group, Banner Bank's PE ratio is still very much lower and closer to the minimum than it is the average. We did use 2 measurements for the average. The first one included Opus Bank, which is one of the peers that we use. However, due to the outliers we saw around 2017, we decided to remove them from that group, and we came up with an average of 1680 without Opus Bank.
Banner's PE ratio as of January 20th of this year was 12.68, which is below the peer average of 14, which indicates that Banner Corporation is undervalued.
So our second valuation method, the PE price target, we calculated this by taking the peer average quarterly PE and multiplied this by the forward EPS estimate to get a total of 68.38 per share. And then using both our valuation methods, we averaged them out, both the PE and the dividend discount model, to get our complete price target of 63.22.
To recap our buy recommendation, we believe that there's a 15% upside in Banner's price, which we believe it will hit the price target of 63.22. This is also based off of the fundamentals and the reflection of Banner's success following the secret commodity or secret community strategic goals that they've set, and how those affect, how those reflect on their financial success.
So risk factors following our buy statement, with the net interest margin compression that we're going to be seeing potentially this year, I think with low deposit costs that Banner currently has, they're going to come out rather ahead. The acquisition risks with their latest acquisition of Alta Pacific has gone fairly well, and the trends show it. With the business and economic cycle risk, Banner Bank has a nice positioning, being in the $10 billion area. So either way the elections go, they're going to come out rather unscathed based on banking. And then passing the $10 billion threshold with the additional regulations, it's still moving very well. Questions?
So Banner Bank is really susceptible to interest rate moves. For this analysis that you guys showed, is that kind of maintaining interest rates where they are, or using some Fed cuts or Fed raises?
Based on the earnings call for the 2019 year, even with the interest rate fluctuations, I believe that they still had a stronger year than last year, than 2018. So I believe those net interest margins, those do include the Fed cut or rate cuts.
Okay. And then were there any non-performing loans over the last couple of years where they had to write off anything off the balance sheet, or how does the balance sheet look?
It was going to be the agriculture loans. We saw some there, and that was increasing. Everything else has been performing unsure as far as the balance sheet.
Okay, thanks.
On slide 4, you guys mentioned the acquisitions that have been part of their overall growth strategy. I guess given the recent acquisitions, do you know how much they've paid for these acquisitions, or the multiple of earnings or book? I guess, can you give me some details around that?
Sorry, we cannot.
Okay, no, that's not a problem. And then on your valuation analysis, the peer group you mentioned, you took out Opus Bank for that analysis. Who were the other peers that you guys looked at to do that?
For our peer group, we had Columbia Banking, CDB Financial, Bank of California, First Interstate, Glacier, Heritage Financial, PacWest Bancorp, Trico Bank Shares, Umpqua, and Western Alliance.
Okay, gotcha. And I guess that's slide 19. And looking at that, it appears the banner maybe is one of the, maybe in the cheapest quartile on a PE ratio. Do you think there's any reason why they sit there currently?
It may be due to some of the volatility we saw in the ROA and ROE, even though those are equally up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the fact you guys are using the dividend discount model, could you walk me through some of the assumptions that you used there? Because it looks like you just kind of looked at recent history. Is that the way you handled it? And how much, what kind of adult, I don't know what their payout ratio is. Like, how much sensitivity is there incorporated in your dividend discount model?
So we used, for the dividend payout, we tried to use the 5-year average. That way we got some of the volatility that we saw in the ROE. Because it fluctuated quite a bit, so that way we came around that 3.6, capturing all of that movement.
Trying to kind of flip pages on here. So given the recent publicity over the coronavirus, how do you see that impacting your business model?
To be determined. I mean, it could go bad, but it's also speculation at this point whether or not we'll see anything.
Okay, along those same lines then, so the fact that you mentioned that they have some agricultural exposure, trade policy and kind of all those different components, how should I think about their agricultural exposure and how much risk is there? Is it potentially tailwind or headwind, or do they already get enough loan loss reserves where they may be overbooked and now we've reconciled trade? How should I think about that?
They have been decreasing over the years, and then they have been increasing their commercial loans, so I think they're diversifying away from that. I don't necessarily know how to answer that.
So I'll ask one more if you guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
So then when I think about their loan portfolio, kind of the constructs of it, is it mainly floating rate, is it mainly fixed rate? Do they have CMBS or they sell to the secondary market? How should I think about their loan portfolio?
I'd say more fixed. Their largest component is going to be the multifamily and physical construction and buildings.
Did you guys look at the breakdown of loans by geography at all?
Yes, there was a majority of them were in Washington. I think a little bit less than 50%.
Okay. And then, I don't know if you had a slide in here or not, but did you also look at the composition? I mean, you touched on multifamily being a big component. What does their loan portfolio look like?
As for the loan portfolio, it's 8% consumer, 10 residential, multifamily, construction, and agriculture commercial put together for 22%.
Okay, great.
And you guys kind of touched on how they're undervalued based on kind of ratios. What are some of maybe the catalysts that are going to drive the buy recommendation that you guys have?
We believe that if they continue to successfully acquire more banks and continue to improve on their ROE and their ability to keep competitive net interest margin, I believe that they will continue to raise rates.
And I noticed that their non-performing assets increased quite a bit in the most recent quarter, but they didn't take that many loan losses. What do you think is the constructs of why the management team would be doing that?
Based on their earnings calls for the last quarter, I believe they only had around one business relationship where they had credit risks for one firm doing agriculture. That was based on the type of agriculture they were doing.
What do you guys think would be the best environment for this business? What would, if you were the CEO and you thought, I want the best environment possible for my business, what does that look like?
someday that they increase the rates.
Mhm.
As soon as possible.
And your forecast assumed what?
Hmm.
Your buy recommendation assumed what, as far as rates were concerned?
We think it's gonna stay, I think it's gonna probably jump up after in 2021.
And I've also noticed, and I've never been a banking analyst, but my general understanding is that seems like there's been a lot of bank closures in the last couple of years, in the last 10 years. What do you think is going on there? Like, how should I think about the industry in terms of, the model of today versus 10 years ago versus 10 years from now?
I think they're doing a good job at as retaining their on deposits while closing branches. Talking about the innovative banking capabilities, having the availability of just keeping an ATM available in some of the areas while closing some of the branches and increasing their efficiencies. I don't think there's a lot of deposit runoff with that model.
Okay, so that's a tailwind for them going forward.
And then looking at technology, do you think they're kind of like a leader or laggard when they're trying to implement some technology kind of moving forward throughout their branches?
I think they're in a position where they're not able to actually be a leader in the technology. I think they're right in the middle of where they need to be. But no, with the smart ATMs, it's great.
Mhm.
It's a good to be able to keep what they have.
You guys look at insider purchases at all? Like, has the management team stepped up with their own checkbook and bought the stock, or do they sell it as soon as they get options, or how should I think about insider buying?
That is not something that we looked at.
And you guys did mention low cost deposit base due to kind of the geographic makeup of it. Do you think that's sustainable?
In the rural areas, I think it's sustainable, but as they move into higher density areas such as Southern California, it may not be as sustainable.
That's about it.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Good
Nice
job,
job,
guys.
guys.
Good job, guys.